In college, my group mates removed my name from our project minutes before submission. 2 years later, I ended up grading their thesis as part of a blind peer review panel. I gave them a 4/10 with notes saying, lack of integrity visible throughout. If you've ever done a group project in college, you probably already know it's either the best or the absolute worst part of the semester. There's no in between. People either pull their weight or they turn into ghosts who show up on submission day with excuses and a smile. I was a second-year student at the time, majoring in communications. The irony is not lost on me. I was studying how to be a good communicator, how to work in teams, mediate conflict, present ideas, and yet I ended up in a group that broke every rule of basic decency. There were 4 of us assigned to this final capstone project, the big one that counted for like 40% of our grade. You know the kind: write a paper, present it, and demonstrate a real-world application. It wasn't supposed to be rocket science. Our topic was digital misinformation and the erosion of public trust. Yeah, let that marinate. The group consisted of me, Tom, the self-appointed leader, Priya, always too busy, and Rachel, influencer light. Did all the design but never read a single source. And then there was me, Mark. I was the one who actually gave a damn. I did the research, pulled sources, cross-checked references, even set up a meeting with a local journalist to use as a primary interview source. I kept track of every meeting, every deliverable, every deadline. For the first month, it was fine. People showed up. Tom was overbearing but tolerable. Priya flaked but made up for it sometimes, and Rachel stayed in her Canva comfort zone. I picked up the slack. It's just what I do. I'm the reliable guy, the quiet one, the "you're so nice" guy. I hate that version of myself now. Everything unraveled the night before the submission. We had a shared Google document. I had been working on it all week, polishing the final section, refining citations, adding the interview excerpts. Around 11:30 p.m., I logged off, told the group in our WhatsApp chat that I'd do one last review in the morning before submission. Everyone gave a thumbs up. At 8 a.m., I logged in. My name was gone from the author list. Every comment and suggestion I'd made, resolved and deleted. Even the paragraphs I'd written, reworded just enough to strip my formatting and make it look like someone else had contributed. I thought it was a glitch. Maybe someone had reverted to an old version. I checked the version history. Nope. The last person to edit? Tom, followed by Rachel and Priya, right after. There was even a version with a comment thread that said, Tom, should we just cut Mark out? He barely did anything. Rachel, yeah, TBH, he's just been editing, not contributing. Priya, he'll be fine. He's not the type to make a scene. I stared at the screen for a long time. I don't even know how long. My hands were shaking, but not from anger at first. It was this weird numbness. Like your body doesn't know what emotion to land on because betrayal hits like a dozen at once. Then came the rage. I messaged the group chat. Is this a joke? No reply. I called Tom. Straight to voicemail. I emailed our professor, attached screenshots, even uploaded a Drive link with the version history to prove my work. She replied 3 hours later. I understand your concern, Mark. But since the group has already submitted the project with 3 authors listed, it's difficult to make a change retroactively without significant proof of misconduct. I recommend focusing on your individual final exam, which will also weigh into your final grade. That's it. That was the help I got. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut by people who smiled to my face. You know what's worse than being stabbed in the back? Watching them celebrate after. I saw their Instagram stories. Them laughing in the quad, making jokes about pulling an all-nighter, getting group project PTSD. Tom even posted a boomerang of them high-fiving with the caption, Dream Team Energy. And me? I sat in the library, quietly uninvited from my own work. I didn't fail the course. My final exam pulled me through. But my GPA took a hit. A hit that delayed my internship offer, which snowballed into a full summer of job hunting. I didn't talk about it much. Maybe to one close friend. Maybe to myself. I buried it like people bury small traumas, deep enough that it stopped bleeding, but close enough that it always hurt when poked. And I made a promise that day. If I ever had a chance to make it right, not just for me, but for every Mark who got screwed over by a fake dream team, I'd take it. I didn't expect the universe to listen. But 2 years later, it did. In the most unexpected way. And this time, I didn't flinch. 2 years can change a lot, but some things don't fade. The memory of what they did to me never stopped echoing in the back of my mind. I graduated, found work, and moved cities, but I never forgot the lesson. Sometimes, the people who smile at you the most are sharpening their knives behind your back. I ended up doing my master's in media ethics and strategy at a well-known program that emphasized peer-reviewed research, the kind of place that bragged about producing industry leaders and future policy advisors. It was intense, but I liked it. There was structure, integrity, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in a place where people actually cared about the work, not just the grades. In my second year, I was invited to join a blind peer review panel. The department had a program where master's students could volunteer to anonymously evaluate undergraduate theses from other colleges for a symposium competition. Each reviewer was assigned 4 papers. We were told to score each submission based on clarity, research depth, originality, and overall integrity of the work. I thought nothing of it at first. Just another responsibility to add to the pile. Then I opened the third paper in my folder. Title: Algorithmic Influence and Public Opinion, The Echo Chamber Effect. It was weirdly familiar. I started reading, and within the first 2 pages, my stomach sank. Paragraphs had been rearranged, but I could tell. This was our project. The one I'd bled for. The same damn research I'd pulled from primary sources, written about in my solo section, even the exact same flow of logic. A couple stats were updated, a few citations modernized, but it was ours. Except the listed authors? Tom, Rachel, Priya. No mention of me, not even in acknowledgments. They'd submitted our old project, tweaked just enough to pass basic plagiarism checks, as their senior thesis. I sat there, stunned. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. But then I pulled up the old Drive folder I had backed up out of spite, found the original PDF, and compared the two. It was blatant. Even the fake survey we'd run, with responses from like 28 students, they used the same graph. Same typo in the axis label. Same fake quote from that journalist I interviewed myself. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't coincidence. This was theft. Again, I was shaking with adrenaline. But I wasn't a 19-year-old anymore. I had learned the rules now. I knew how the system worked. I knew that if I wanted to do something about it, I needed to play it by the book, but I also needed to make it count. So I did what they did to me. I smiled on paper. But behind the scenes, I was building a case. I graded the paper just like I was supposed to. Give it a 4 out of 10. My written review said, work lacks original perspective. Research appears derivative, with repetitive logic and weak substantiation of key claims. Style shifts abruptly, suggesting multiple conflicting voices or revisions. Most critically, integrity issues are visible throughout. If this is representative of the author's best, I'd question their independent capabilities. Cold. Clinical. Absolutely true. But I wasn't done. I sent an anonymous note to the department head overseeing the symposium. I told them that I had strong evidence that the thesis was plagiarized from a prior submission I'd personally worked on. I gave them the original time-stamped files, screenshots, and side-by-side excerpts that proved the duplication. I even pointed out the recycled visual data and the uncredited quote they never sourced. They took it seriously. The project was disqualified from the competition before final scoring. But again, I wasn't done. Because while this would hit their academic records, I wanted one more thing. Closure. I looked them up on LinkedIn. All 3 of them had graduated and gone on to try impressively mediocre things. Tom was working in content strategy for a fintech startup. Rachel was doing marketing for an MLM-adjacent beauty brand. Priya had a title so vague it might as well have said professional LinkedIn user. But all 3 of them had the thesis listed on their profiles. Their award-nominated thesis. So I did what any ethical reviewer wouldn't do, but what the wronged kid in me needed to. I made a burner account. Professional looking. Industry adjacent. Messaged each of them separately. Hey, I was on the peer review panel for the symposium where your thesis got pulled. Just wanted to say, it's crazy how much that project resembled something I worked on a few years back with a guy named Mark Patel. Small world. Just that. Nothing more. All 3 of them deleted the thesis from their profiles within a week. And me? I didn't smile. Not yet. That would come later, because life wasn't done giving me chances. Something bigger was coming. And this time, I would be face to face with Tom again. And I wouldn't be anonymous anymore. About 6 months after the review debacle, I was knee-deep in my final thesis while also working part-time as a research assistant for a mid-sized communications agency. The place focused on political strategy and digital media ethics, 2 things I happened to be obsessed with. My supervisor, Dr. Linz, was a no-nonsense woman in her early 40s who ran the place like a newsroom and expected everyone to bring their brain to work, not just their hands. I respected her, and more importantly, she respected me. One afternoon, I was helping shortlist candidates for the agency's new research coordinator role. We were expanding and needed someone to oversee data visualization and manage junior interns. Dr. Lenz handed me a folder of printed resumes and said, "Mark, you're the best person to do the first pass. You know what matters here. Flag anyone worth interviewing." Most of the resumes blurred together, too much fluff, not enough substance. Then I hit one that froze me. Thomas Richter. I almost laughed. There he was, my old groupmate. The guy who'd smirked when I begged them not to remove my name. The same guy who lied his way through our group defense and somehow made me feel like I was the problem. His resume had a little blurb about the award-nominated thesis, though conveniently no mention of the symposium itself. He also listed that fintech startup I remembered, but apparently he'd left it recently. Said he was looking to transition into ethically driven research spaces. Irony is a language I speak fluently. I paused. My immediate instinct was to toss the resume in the bin. But then something held me back. There was a note scribbled on the top corner in Dr. Lenz's handwriting. Has some relevant analytics experience. Might be useful on short-term contract. I sat with that for a second. I stared at his resume like it was a loaded gun. And then I had the most deliciously unprofessional thought I'd had in years. Let him come. Let him walk in. Let him not recognize me. Let's see what happens. I flagged his name and two others for interviews. The next week, Thomas Richter, Tom, walked into the agency lobby wearing the same smug, overconfident expression I remembered from college. He didn't recognize me at all. I'd filled out over the years, lost the awkward edge, switched to contacts. Maybe the environment threw him off. Or maybe, deep down, he never saw me as someone who could end up on the other side of a hiring table. Dr. Lenz had me join the interview. I asked him questions. Deep ones. Ones I knew would expose how little actual work he'd done in any project he'd claimed. I referenced survey design, citation ethics, and data verification. He fumbled through a few answers, but masked it well. He always had a way of sounding like he knew more than he did. Still, he was decent enough to pass as competent, for now. After he left, Dr. Lenz raised an eyebrow. You weren't too hard on him, were you? I just smiled. Not at all. I think we should bring him on for the trial period. I want to see how he handles real accountability. All right, she said. He starts Monday. And just like that, the man who once told me, "You're not smart enough to lead this," was about to start taking instructions from me. He still didn't recognize me when we onboarded him. Not the second day either. On the third day, he walked into a strategy session where I was leading a discussion, sat down, and finally stared at me a beat longer than usual. I saw it in his face. That flicker. That mental search file opening like a dusty drawer. He still wasn't sure. And that made it better. For 2 weeks, I watched him flail. I gave him honest assignments, but they weren't easy. He missed basic references, cut corners, pitched ideas that had ethical holes big enough to drive a truck through. I corrected him kindly, patiently. It must have driven him insane. He started staying late. One night, we were both at the office around 9 p.m. He came up to my desk and said, "You seem familiar. Did you go to Coleridge University?" I didn't look up from my screen. I did. He swallowed. Were you? In Media and Society 301? I looked at him and smiled. Yeah. You might remember me from the group project you submitted without me. His face went pale. I let the silence do the heavy lifting. You're Mark Patel, the one you said wasn't strategic enough to be worth credit. The guy who built your entire literature review and created the original research structure. He opened his mouth, then closed it. You're running this place? He asked, voice thin. I leaned back. I helped decide who stays. That's close enough. I pulled out a folder, the one with his file, and handed him a single sheet. It was a printout of his onboarding checklist. At the bottom, it said, "This position is probationary and subject to weekly performance reviews. Integrity violations will result in immediate dismissal." Then I placed a note on top. Still stealing? Because you just took someone else's job. His mouth dropped. He looked down, confused. What? I stood up. You lied back then. You stole my work. Now you've walked into a space where honesty is currency and you're bankrupt again. He stammered. I didn't think. I know, I said. That was always the problem. He was gone by the end of the hour. No dramatic exit. No raised voice. Just a quiet walk of shame past the desk of the person he once humiliated. Me. I sat down and took a breath. And this time? I smiled. After Tom left the office that night, it was weirdly quiet. Not just in the physical sense, though the air did feel lighter without his self-satisfied presence, but in the way things felt internally. Like some internal noise I didn't even realize was blaring had finally been switched off. I stayed late, finishing some reports. I didn't go out for drinks. Didn't call anyone. I didn't even text my group chat. For something I'd fantasized about so vividly, what it would be like to finally confront the guy who tried to erase me. It felt anticlimactic, satisfying, sure, but not in the firework explosion kind of way. More like finally taking off shoes that were a size too small. The next morning, Dr. Lenz came by my desk with a coffee and said, "That was efficient." I raised an eyebrow. "You knew?" She nodded. "I reviewed your interview notes. Then I remembered your thesis log from last year. Same name. I figured I'd let it play out." I stared at her, stunned. "You set me up?" "I gave you an opportunity," she corrected. "You didn't take revenge. You evaluated him fairly. You gave him tasks he claimed he could do. He failed. The rest? That was on him." I didn't know whether to feel exposed or grateful. Probably both. "You handled it with more grace than most," she added. "Some people implode when they see old ghosts. You shook hands with yours and showed him the door." That stuck with me. Because the truth was, even after all that, after years of therapy, late-night rants to friends, rereading my own research just to remember what I contributed, I still carried that scar. I still felt that twitch when I handed in something with my name on it, half expecting someone to erase it behind my back. It never really goes away, that kind of hurt. When someone makes you feel invisible, especially in a moment when you're trying to be your most seen. When you're 21, still trying to figure out who you are, and 3 people decide you're not worth a single line on a PDF. That leaves a dent. And it didn't help that back then, no one had stood up for me. The professor accepted their clerical error excuse. The department let the symposium credits go through. It had felt like yelling into a wind tunnel, anger with nowhere to land. So watching Tom walk out of that office with nothing? That wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming ground I lost years ago. That weekend, I drove back home to visit my parents. My mom always said I worked too much, and she wasn't wrong. I needed a break. We sat on the back porch, drinking cardamom tea, and she asked me about work. Usually, I deflected. But this time, I told her the whole story. Not the petty version. The honest one. From the group betrayal to the blind peer review to the moment Tom finally realized who I was. She sat in silence for a long time afterward, then just said, "I wish you didn't have to become so strong because of people like that. But I'm proud that you did." That hit harder than I expected. We forget, sometimes, that our pain isn't just ours. It echoes. My parents had seen me come home from that group project silent and withdrawn, pretending I was just tired. They never knew why I'd suddenly become obsessed with individual work, why I stopped trusting team efforts. That betrayal didn't just affect my grades. It changed how I moved through the world. And now, I confronted it, not with shouting or dramatic reveals, but with quiet professionalism, accountability, and a simple note that said, "I remember. And I've grown." That Monday, back at the office, I got a package in my inbox from our IT admin. It was a printed resignation form from Tom. He'd emailed it in at 3 a.m., no message attached, just a PDF and silence. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I opened a blank email and typed a line I never thought I'd write. "Best of luck in your next chapter. May it be built with integrity." I never heard back. A month later, our agency held a panel at my old university. It was surreal being back there, walking past the same lecture halls where I'd once begged a professor to believe me. I recognized a few faculty members but kept it professional. I was a guest speaker now, not a student, and certainly not a victim. After the panel, a student came up to me. She looked nervous, maybe 19 or 20, holding a copy of our recent ethics handbook. "Your part in this, it really hit me," she said. "I'm dealing with something similar right now. My capstone partner's trying to claim credit for everything. But hearing you talk about documentation, boundaries, and speaking up, that helped." I didn't know what to say at first. I just nodded. Then I told her the thing I wish someone had told me when I was in her shoes. Even if no one believes you now, the truth has a way of surfacing. Maybe not today. Maybe not next semester. But it will. Keep receipts. Keep your integrity. And don't let one betrayal make you small. She teared up. We shook hands. She walked away a little taller. And me? I finally understood something. Revenge had felt good. But redemption? That was better. Because sometimes, the best full circle isn't humiliating the people who wronged you. It's showing up in the spaces they said you'd never belong, doing the work they thought you couldn't do, and helping someone else avoid the hurt you once carried. And if the people who doubted you have to watch you rise, well, that's just symmetry. I once read that success doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives in quiet moments, in a steady heartbeat, in a breath of relief, in a Tuesday morning where you realize you no longer carry someone else's shame. That's what life felt like now. Quieter, but better. Months had passed since Tom walked out of the office and never came back. I didn't follow up, didn't check his LinkedIn, didn't search his name. For once, I didn't need to, because I wasn't measuring my growth by what happened to him anymore. I was measuring it by what stopped happening to me: panic before meetings, second-guessing every draft, bracing for someone to speak over me. That silence was gold. There was one thing I hadn't told anyone yet, not even Dr. Lenz. A few weeks after the peer review panel, I received an email from our university's department head. It was short and polite. She said she'd been reviewing old symposium documentation and came across a discrepancy regarding the research group credits from 2 years ago. She was reopening the case to ensure accuracy in student records. I sat back in my chair, blinking. I had never filed a formal complaint back then, but I had documented everything: timelines, chat logs, version control screenshots. I had receipts, and when I replied, I attached them all. 2 weeks later, I received confirmation that my name would be retroactively added to the original submission credits. It wouldn't change the past, but it would sit there, in ink and archive, as a correction of what was stolen. I printed the email and folded it into my journal, right between the pages where I'd first written about the betrayal. It was closure I didn't expect. One evening, I ran into Naomi, the only one from that old group who didn't actively remove my name, but didn't stop it either. She was at a networking mixer I attended with some colleagues. She saw me from across the room, and her face flickered with something between recognition and regret. She walked over, holding a glass of white wine. "Hey," she said. "Long time." I nodded. "Yeah, a couple of years." She looked down, then back at me. "I heard about the review panel. About Tom." I said nothing, just waited. She exhaled, then added, "What they did back then. I didn't stand up, and I've regretted it. I guess I thought if I didn't participate, I wasn't responsible. But silence is a kind of choice, too." That caught me off guard. I'd spent so long painting her in neutral tones, neither villain nor ally, that I hadn't expected remorse. I still didn't know what to say, so I said, honestly, "Yeah, it is." She looked me in the eye. "I'm sorry. Truly." I didn't tell her it was okay. It wasn't. But I appreciated the apology more than I expected. Maybe people can change. Maybe not everyone has to be held in place by their worst moment. "I hope you're doing well," she said softly before walking away. And I was. I really was. Work picked up speed after that. I was assigned to lead a new mentorship program for first-year associates, helping them navigate project ethics and collaborative integrity. It was surreal, being trusted as the voice of guidance when I'd once been the kid begging to be heard. I built the program around lessons I'd learned the hard way: over-communication, shared documentation, accountability without hierarchy. I told my mints what I wish someone had told me: you don't have to be loud to matter, but you do have to advocate for yourself. No one else can do it for you. Some days, I still caught myself flinching when people casually referenced group work. The scars were there, but they no longer dictated the story. They just reminded me of the chapters one survived. One particularly rainy evening, I stayed late at the office, finishing up reports while the city lights flickered outside the window. I looked around at the space I now helped run. The soft hum of computers, the scent of leftover coffee, the quiet confidence in my own routine, and I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not triumph. Not revenge. Not even pride. Just peace. Because I didn't need validation anymore. I didn't need someone to apologize or pay or fall apart. I had done the work. I had faced the silence. I had rebuilt what others tried to erase. And most importantly, I had helped others build, too. I think that's what real revenge looks like when it's done right. It's not fire and fury. It's not dragging people through the mud. It's rebuilding quietly, powerfully, and then becoming the kind of person who'd never do to someone else what was done to you. Sometimes, your rise won't come with applause. Sometimes, it'll come in a simple moment: a cup of tea, a corrected record, a name finally placed where it belonged. And when it does, you won't even think of them anymore. You'll just keep rising. Because you can.